Hello students, welcome to this course on gender sensitization. I have been talking about different kinds of harassment, and I think by now you must be clear as to what is gender violence. Now one more kind of gender violence is sexual harassment at the workplace, and today I am going to discuss that, and this is something which is very important. Before sexual harassment was given a name, women just called it life. When we were young, there was nothing, there was no law called sexual harassment law or something, and we just felt that because you are born a girl you have to deal with it, or it was just called as a normal flirting. Women just called it life. It was in 1978 that Lynn Farley published a book called Sexual Shakedown, and she introduced this term. Again, it was reinforced in 1979 by Catherine McKinnon, who published a book called Sexual Harassment of the Working Women. And down the line, you have key legislation, broad feminist theorizing about gender relations and politics, and they have all helped to define and popularize this term. There are lots of debates, international debates. Sometimes in some countries it is seen as a criminal offense. In the US it was only recognized in 80s, where they were talking of equal employment opportunities for women, and in other countries it is seen as a general phenomena and they try to bring out legal remedies. In some other places it is seen as only a workplace phenomena and you have civil and labor laws to deal with it. So it is covered by different kinds of law throughout the world: criminal, civil, anti-discriminatory, labor laws or tort laws which are there. There was a very interesting case in US called the Michelle Vinson case. In 1974, Michelle Vinson was working in the Meritor Saving Bank as a teller trainee, and her immediate supervisor was Shirney Taylor, who was the vice president of the bank. Over the next 4 years, Michelle got lot of promotion. She almost, she rose to a high level. Some of it was because of her own merit. But then suddenly in 1978, her services were terminated, and it was said that she was taking too many leaves. When she went to the federal district court, and then the case went on, and it came to the conclusion that Michelle Vinson was also in a sexual relationship with her boss, so she cannot speak of sexual harassment, and the case was dismissed. But then again, when the case went to the Court of Appeal for the District of Columbia Circuit, in the judgment which was passed in 1986 called the Vinson versus Meritor Saving Bank case, it ruled out that there was sexual harassment, because whatever, she may be in a relationship with her boss, but we have to understand the power dynamics. He was in that position, and so it recognized the sexual harassment, and it was she was entitled to those claims. In India, we never had a law for sexual harassment. It was, however, it was only treated in the Indian Penal Code under various laws. You had section 209, where it was talking of, obscene acts and songs which were punishable by 3 months fine or both. In section 354, it was seen as an assault or criminal force to a woman with the intent to outrage her modesty. There was punishment of 2 years or fine or both. In section 509 of the IPC, again, any kind of gesture or act that was supposed to insult the modesty of women, it was by 1 year fine or both. And then there were various industrial dispute acts, civil suits which tried to deal with this issue. There were 3 very landmark judgments which came up. The Radhabai versus D. Ramchandran case in 1973. Radhabai was the secretary of the state social welfare minister. She protested against the abuse of the girls in the welfare institutions, and she was molested and dismissed. In 1975, the Supreme Court passed a judgment in her favor and she got back all her back pay with all the benefits. There was the very famous Rupandev Bajaj and KPS Gill case in 1988. In a dinner, he just slapped her posterior, but finally she won the case, and he was fined 2.5 lakhs in lieu of 3 months of imprisonment, which was really not much. Gill had been hailed as a, he had fought terrorism, and many people said that, why is she making such a big issue of it? What did he do? See, it was not just, a woman cannot be treated like that. Slapping her posterior, she is also of an equal rank. So that is where we have to understand the complexity of sexual harassment. There was another case in 1992, S.C. Bhatia, a professor in the Department of Adult and Continuing Education in Delhi University, and finally he was dismissed because many students complained. In India, sexual harassment law only came up with the Bhavri Devi case. In 1992, she was a social worker who was working in a government development program in Bhateri village in Rajasthan. There was a child marriage which was taking place. The marriage was of the upper caste people, and she belonged to the lower caste. When she tried to stop the marriage, she was raped and thrown out, and then many of the women's group filed a public interest litigation saying that she was not able to enjoy her fundamental rights under Article 14, 19 and 21 in view of the circumstances under which she was working, and there was a violation of her rights. And it was in 1997 that the Vishaka guidelines were issued on 13th August 1997, which has to be followed. And finally, in 2013, the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act came into being. So now we need to understand what is sexual harassment. How do you define sexual harassment? Can you tell me? Sexual harassment is any kind of unwelcome sexually determined behavior. It could be a physical contact, a demand or a request for sexual favors, it could be sexually colored remarks, or it could even be showing pornography or any other kind of physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. It could be quid pro from a person in authority trying to, in exchange for favors, giving better promotion, perks, like I mentioned the Vincent case in US. It could be amongst colleagues, it could be among clients, where women work in sexually packed industries like air hostesses, beer bar, etc. It could also be among women of authority undermining other women. So it could also be any kind of, even if it is a verbal harassment, not exactly, showing pornography, asking a person questions, a woman making her uncomfortable where she is not interested, and telling lies to the others about her sex life, any kind of unwelcome physical contact, trying to grab, brush, touch, pinch or pat a woman, that is also an unwelcome demand. Or it could also be trying to show any kind of pornographic offensive material to a person. Sexual harassment has a lot of impact. It makes the whole environment very hostile. Many feminists have also equated it to psychological rape because it leads to so much of harassment for that woman. She feels so guilty, there is nervousness, she becomes a psychological wreck. A woman may lose her job, or she may just quit, or she may protest and quit. She would go through that feeling of humiliation, guilt. Often women think they are the cause of this. It could also restrict a woman's mobility. Have you heard of that campaign, Take Back the Night? It's a very interesting campaign that happened throughout the world. And they said, why is it that the night does not belong to the women? Why are girls not safe at nights? So, public spaces are not available to women at night. The victim here becomes the wrongdoer. There is a slander on her morals and her character. Now, when we talk of sexual harassment, there is so much of a myth which has been created, but there is a reality, and most of these myths have been created by the films. One of the myths is that it is very harmless to women, and women who object to it have no sense of humor. It is belittling a woman. In reality, we just look upon a woman as a temptress, and she is seen as an Eve. There is a myth saying it's a personal problem between two individuals, but the fact is, it is a pervasive public problem, and therefore it needs public solutions. Many a times it says that women use sex to go ahead. They misuse claims of sexual harassment. There is a myth saying that prostitutes cannot be harassed, but the fact is they are regularly sexually harassed by policemen, middlemen and clients. If you look at films, I am sure all of you watch films, there is so much of a myth which has been created. You remember those films where the heroine is supposed to be very beautiful in a college scenario, all these boys are after her, they are teasing her, troubling her, they are harassing her, but the film tries to show that she keeps saying no, but finally no means a yes. The film show that it is a very normal male flirting, it is something which comes very naturally to men, but the reality is it is an assertion of power, it is an expression of sexuality. Films show that only that heroine who is the most beautiful, the most popular person will be sexually harassed, and it tries to show that women enjoy that sexual harassment and eve teasing, but the reality is it is very humiliating and degrading. Another big myth is that women ask for it by wearing revealing clothes, women who are single or divorced. There was an exhibition put up in New York City where they tried to put up the clothes worn by the women when they were harassed, when they were raped. And none of these were revealing clothes, they were very decent clothes. So, clothes have nothing to do with it. We have to really look at, the law which says that there are various duties of the employer in a work situation. The employer has to see that they have to prevent or deter the commission of acts of sexual harassment. They have to provide the procedure for the resolution, settlement and prosecution of the acts of harassment. They have to, the whole sexual harassment policy has to be notified, published, circulated. It should be known to the people along with their discipline rules. And there are various preventive measures which are spoken about. What is the kind of appropriate work condition, which has to respect work, leisure, health and hygiene, so that there is no hostile environment at the workplace. And no employee women should feel that there is a disadvantage with her in connection with her working at that place. There are various criminal proceedings which can be done under this. Disciplinary action has to be taken. Now, who are the women who are protected under this law? One, women who draw regular salary, who receive an honorarium. Something very interesting about the law I want you to pay attention to. Even women who do voluntary work in government, private and unorganized sectors, they are the protected ones in this law. There are various complaint mechanisms which are there. It could, the law mentions that it should be time bound, there should be, a time bound mechanism to deal with complaint. It also talks about a complaint committee, which has to be headed by a woman and half its members should be women. And there should be NGOs involved in it and people who are aware of the issue of sexual harassment. And something very important is that they should maintain a strict confidentiality. There is a lot which is discussed in the law about victim protection, and the victim who is sexually harassed has the option to seek her own transfer or perpetrate her perpetrators transfer, and the complaints committee has to report to the government annually as to how it has dealt with the various complaints in his department. It recognizes sexual harassment as a serious crime. Every institution must have a anti-sexual harassment policy. It must have a complaint committee. The policy must be available to everyone. It should discuss its policy with the new staff. Even third party awareness should be created, and it should try to prevent sexual harassment. Now, as young students, how do we deal with it? See, every time, one, you cannot ignore sexual harassment thinking that it will go away. A person who is in this habit of harassing will continue to harass. You should not blame yourself. Talk to your friends about sexual harassment. You should also maintain a notebook. If something happened, please note it down. Discuss it with your friends. Because tomorrow, if that committee asks you for some proof, many of the women do not have any proof. Try to describe that incident, try to give it a name, show how you are uncomfortable with it. These are the notes which you are going to keep, and do not delay in reporting it. Create a witness for whatever is happening, because you will have a friend who will always be with you, and also then finally go and file a formal complaint. There are various benefits of sexual harassment policy. It creates a safe environment. It improves interpersonal relations. There is higher work performance and productivity. There would be less absenteeism. You retain the valued employers. There would be an increase in profitability, reduction in imposed costs, and it would enhance the image of that public. It would be a better practice. And therefore, what is very important is we should create a environment which is friendly to women, so that their full potential is obtained, and sexual harassment should never be a part of the working environment. Thank you very much.